Oh, is this live yet? Hi, welcome to Genus monthly webinar, Sustainable Spotlight. We'll get started momentarily. Perhaps I will put the material here. Yep. Okay. So my name is Stephanie. I'm the Portfolio Manager and Head of Foundations and Nonprofits at Genus. I'll be hosting the session today, and I'll take you through some deep dive into some of the sustainable investments we hold in our funds, and also through our Impact Investment Council. And I'm very happy to have with me today for this discussion, Alexa Blaine and Rachel Murphy from Deacon, and one of the investments we hold in our Impact Investment Council. And in this webinar, we will explore some topics. For example, how we choose the companies in our sustainable and impact funds, and how your investment in sustainable companies impact those companies and their stakeholders, and why now is a critical time to direct capital towards these sustainable and impact-focused companies. And towards the end, we will also have some time for some Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat. And also, we have added links to connect with Alexa, Rachel, and myself on social media in the chat. So please feel free to do so if you would like to. And before we jump into the topic, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, if you would like to have the best viewing experience, please maximize your screen. And as I mentioned, please type your questions in the chat anytime, because we'll be spending some time towards the end to answer some of your questions. And also, if you encounter any technical troubles, please let us know through the chat. If possible, we'll have someone on hand to try and assist. And also, another great solution that could solve most of the audio and video trouble would be to hop off and then hop back into the room. And now, I would also like to start by extending my gratitude to the Indigenous peoples, specifically the Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and the Musqueam, whose lands I'm honored to speak to you today. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations, and also our own understanding for the local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Canada is home to Indigenous people from across the Turtle Island, and we are really grateful to be able to have the opportunity to work and meet on this territory. So now let's get started. So here I would like to give an overview of the different types of sustainable investments that can be seen in the market, what they mean, and what their implications are on your investments from a financial and sustainability point of view. So on the very left side, we have regular investing. So regular investing is like conventional financial investing, where ESG factors are not considered and only the financial merits of an investment matter. The next level in the shades, it's responsible investing. In responsible investing, it's where investors will start to consider ESG factors. However, these factors will only affect or change their decision if they don't appear to harm the financial prospects. And then the next level is socially responsible investing. So this is where most of our funds are to various degrees. And this is where investors will incorporate ESG factors into the investment process, and also where they will actually divest or invest in companies in order to get a better alignment with their values. The next block of sustainable investments can be categorized under mission-based investing, or so-called impact investing. So on a very broad basis, impact investing is investing in companies with the intention to generate positive and measurable social or environmental impact for a financial return. And by liquid impact, simply, it means that the strategy is focused on investing in public companies, so then the liquidity profile is preserved, and also the return profile will be more market-like. And the next level is the liquid impact. In liquid impact, typical investments include private equity investments. So private equity are not yet public, but they are often more established than venture capital. And their business model is still more focused, and also their impact is more focused. And they're often subject to lockup periods until the planned exit through IPO or some buyout events. And so overall, the risk is higher, return is higher, impact is also higher, and liquidity is lower. Next level is venture impact. So typical investments is venture capital investing in early stage company, often with disruptive or innovative products or solutions that can solve some of the problems that we are facing in the society or the environment. And because of the focus on earlier stage companies, they are often also higher risk, but then it also comes with higher impact and higher return potential. And the lockup period for these type of investments is usually longer, so the liquidity is even lower than in liquid impact. On the right-hand side, it's philanthropic impact. So this is where investors are willing to sacrifice some return in order to achieve very high level of impact or some very unique impact that they desire. And for a liquid impact, venture impact, and philanthropic impact, those are the some of the investment options that you could find in our Impact Investment Council. And I forgot to say, liquid impacts is somewhere, for example, like our high impact equity strategy would be classified as liquid impact. So at Genus, all of our strategies incorporate ESG factors through varying levels of screening and also directly integrating ESG factors into the investment analysis and security selection. And we believe ESG factors matter financially, and also our research has shown that companies with positive ESG attributes, they achieve better performance in the long run. And all of our strategies, including conventional fossil-free or impact strategies, they all integrate ESG factors into the security selection process. This is where we rank stocks by employing a multi-style discipline, which includes sustainability as one of the factors alongside other financial factors. And in addition to this ESG factor integration, we also apply negative screening and positive screening. So, for example, for our conventional strategies, which is on the leftmost block of the funds, and we apply negative screening based on carbon intensity and overall ESG rating. However, the thresholds for these screening are much less stringent than for fossil-free funds and impact funds. So the intent is to really screen out the worst performers in carbon emission and the worst performers in corporate practices. The next block is our fossil-free strategies. So in addition to the more stringent carbon intensity and overall ESG rating screening, we also screen out companies by looking at their fossil fuel exposure. So any companies with fossil fuel reserve or with direct involvement in the extraction, exploration, transmission, processing of fossil fuels, those will be screened out too. And apart from that, we also screen out companies who has significant part of their revenue derived from harmful products or services. Those would be the so-called sin industries or sin stocks. And some of the examples would include alcohol, tobacco, adult entertainment, military contracting, and some other factors as well. And finally, on top of all that, we also applied negative screening based on controversies involvement in the supply chain, throughout the supply chain, in the community, in the environment, all the way through to consumer products issues as well. And finally, for impact strategies, in addition to all the fossil-free screening that we apply, we also apply positive screening. So this is where we look for companies that are financially sound and also have a very high level of social or environmental impact. And for example, for a high impact equity fund, we do require at least 50% net positive impact within the fund, the portfolio companies. So for impact, we measure impacts by the percentage of revenue of a company that is coming from impactful products or services that can be attributed to one or more of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And here, from here, I would like to maybe take a deeper dive into the dark blue end of the spectrum, our impact strategies. And I will highlight a couple of companies that we have in our high impact equity fund. I would also like to discuss one of the impact investments that we hold in our Impact Investment Council with Alexa and Rachel. So Impact Investment Council, in short, it's a fully managed, customized impact portfolio management services that is diversified across different asset classes, covering both public and private impacts. And this is mainly for accredited investors only. And the reason why we still want to share, this impact investment example is because there are some really, really amazing impacts out of this investment, and also some very amazing stories that we would really like to share. So here, Enphase Energy is one of the highlighted companies that we hold in our high impact equity fund. So Enphase Energy is a leading global energy technology company that provides residential solar and energy storage solutions. They develop and manufacture solar microinverters, battery energy storage, and also EV charging stations, primarily for the residential segment. And one of the differentiated offerings is the microinverter. So microinverters converts DC direct current into AC at each of the individual solar panel. And this is in contrary to the string inverter system in most solar PV system. So in a string inverter system, all the solar panels are connected in a series, creating a string. And the downside of this system is that the output of the whole system will be limited by the lowest performing panel. And if one panel breaks down, the whole system breaks down. And because of all these innovative products in solar energy storage and also energy management solutions, Enphase creates a very high level of environmental impact. And those are contributing to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals number 7, affordable and clean energy, and number 13, climate action. And currently, 100% of Enphase revenue is creating positive impact, contributing to these two SDGs. And also, since its founding in 2006, Enphase has generated 43.4 billion kilowatt hour in clean energy, which is enough to power almost 4 million homes with energy for a year, and also equivalent to preventing 31 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere. And because of and apart from this very, very high level of impact, Enphase Energy also has very strong financial performance and outlook, and also it has got a very high financial ranking within our security selection model. Vertex Pharmaceutical. Vertex is a global biopharmaceutical company based in Boston in the US. So its mission is to invest in scientific innovation to create transformative medicine for people with serious diseases. One of the key success strategy is to focus on innovation with very substantial investment in R&D. And they are a leader in developing and providing therapeutic medicine for cystic fibrosis. And outside of cystic fibrosis, they also have a very established pipeline and are on track to provide approved medicines for sickle cell disease, beta thalassemia, acute pain, and also type 1 diabetes. And because of this innovation and all these products, they create a high level of social impact, contributing to UN SDG number 3, good health and well-being. And apart from that, they also have very significant commitments and run educational programs to inspire the next generation's innovators. So these programs, they aim to increase these innovators' interest in STEAM and also to enhance their innovation skills. And these programs also have a particular focus on creating opportunities for young women and also students of color, because these groups are usually underrepresented in biotech. And because of all these programs and all these innovations and products, Vertex, almost 100% of its revenue is contributing to good health and well-being and quality education. And apart from these high-level impacts, Vertex also demonstrate very strong financial performance with very healthy and consistent revenue growth and profitability and strong cash flows. And so now, so much from me. I would like to pass on to Alexa and Rachel to share with us the journey in mobilizing capital on the ground to generate impact and also to address some of the most pressing issues we are facing today.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. It's such a pleasure to be here, and hello, everyone. As Stephanie said, my name's Alexa Blaine. I'm a managing partner with Deetkin Impact. Deetkin Impact, we're an investment fund manager, and we are exclusively focused on impact investing. So we hang out over on that dark blue right-hand side of Stephanie's spectrum. And we started here in Vancouver about 10 years ago, and we've grown since then to now manage 5 investment funds, all of which are focused on Latin America and the Caribbean. So that's the region where all of our portfolio companies are based. And across the 5 funds that we manage, we support 55 portfolio companies. Oh, I'm supposed to be advancing my slides. Apologies. There. We support 55 portfolio companies in 17 countries, and that's about 150 million of assets under management in US dollars. We invest through 2 primary verticals or themes. One of those is alternative finance, and by that we mean providing flexible financing or mezzanine financing to growing impact businesses. And then the second vertical is providing financing to sustainable energy, mostly projects, but also companies that are active in sustainable energy, with particular emphasis on Central America and the Caribbean. So in all of these cases, we're only investing in companies that, in addition to best practices and management of their environmental and social risks, are also actively pursuing an environmental or social benefit. And I think one of the differentiators of our approach, and something that we believe is very important to sustainable investing, is that we as impact investors be providers of more than just capital. So part of that means that we need to have very close touch points with our portfolio companies. So we have a team that is based throughout the region and can have very close relationships with the companies that we support. In addition, we only invest in businesses that are themselves sustainable in terms of having a social or environmental benefit as core to their business model, and that are also on track to grow sustainably and profitably. In addition, we see our role as providing capital to support the way that businesses grow, but also to act as a partner for that growth. And that means supporting our companies to better manage ESG risks, to mobilize capital from third parties, so beyond our own financing, by acting as a trusted co-investor to other capital providers that are active in the region, and also by acting as a cheerleader sometimes, and then also supporting our companies to deepen their impact. And a big way that we do that, particularly recently, has been accompanying our portfolio companies to advance their gender-focused business practices. And through that approach, we've emerged as leaders in the gender lens investing space for Latin America and the Caribbean. So all of this, I think, is clearly a high-touch investment approach. So we have quite a bit of person power. So our team is now over 25 people, and 56% of our team are women. And I think that should sort of be the norm, but in investment management, it's definitely not. And so we're very proud that our team is very diverse and representative of the region and the communities that we invest in. I'm based here in Vancouver, but the majority of our team is based in the region where we invest. So we are present in 7 countries. Our largest office is in Costa Rica. We also have a large team in Mexico City. Rachel here is based in Guatemala. So if you're traveling, please come say hi. And then perhaps to zoom in on one of our funds, and this is the fund that Stephanie mentioned is part of the Impact Investment Council, and one in which Genus investors have invested over the years. This is the ELU Women's Empowerment Fund. It's a gender lens investing fund, meaning that we support businesses that are gender leaders or that are working towards better gender practices in their business and really acting as, seeking to provide a demonstration effect in the communities where they operate. This fund was launched in 2019. We managed $35 million of capital in this strategy, and we now support 28 businesses in 13 countries. And by providing capital to this group of businesses, we are very aware of the number of lives that we're touching, and we measure our impact across the portfolio, and we roll that up to the fund level for reporting to our investors on a quarterly basis. And all of our reporting is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, across the businesses that we support, we're touching 750,000 clients, mostly micro entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises. 79% of those clients are women, so close to 590,000 women have received financing through these businesses. In addition, 240,000 people have received healthcare treatments, services, or business training to support the growth of their enterprises. And so this is just the impact that's generated by the capital that we provide and by helping this group of impactful businesses to grow. But one thing that we are really emphasizing, particularly in recent years, is how can we do more? How can we support our businesses to deepen their impact? And that is where I will turn it over to my colleague, Rachel, to talk a little bit about the ELU Women's Empowerment Program.
Thank you, Alexa. And yes, as Alexa mentioned, providing more than just capital is really critical to our investment strategy. And so we wanted to provide a bit more color on how exactly we do that, specifically through the ELU Women's Empowerment Program. So in 2019, we took an important step in terms of deepening our approach in the region through launching this program with the support of USAID and also in partnership with ProMujer, which is an international nonprofit that provides financial inclusion, health, and education programs to low-income women in Latin America, and specifically through their own financial institutions that they manage in the region. And so we launched this program in partnership with their team, really to address the key obstacles to the adoption of gender smart business practices in the region, and really seeking to drive that systemic level change. And so this program had three main components. On one hand, we raised incremental capital, specifically blended finance capital, through a first loss tranche to give more security to investors in post-pandemic times. We also provided technical assistance to portfolio companies, and I will speak a bit more about that on the next slide, as well as focusing on knowledge dissemination and advocacy. We recognize that the broader impact investing and investing ecosystem really needs more resources and guidance as to how to implement a gender smart investment strategy in practice. And so as a result of our activities in these three components, we were able to directly impact over 1,000 people in the region. We led 15 gender technical assistance projects with our portfolio companies. And again, these were really focused on how we can accompany our portfolio companies in terms of advancing and strengthening their gender business practices. We have a very comprehensive gender impact measurement and monitoring process. And what we really noticed is that although companies are highly committed to achieving certain gender objectives and milestones that we set in our contracts, that they really didn't have the resources or the knowledge to do that in-house. And so we've identified that providing this technical assistance, this direct kind of advisory to portfolio companies, helps to rapidly advance those impacts. We also, wanted to reach the broader ecosystem, and so we led a series of workshops for entrepreneurs and business leaders, 17 in total. We led 9 investor education events, showcasing gender lens investing in practice through the example of the ELU Women's Empowerment Fund. And we also developed an open source toolbox, and I'll pop that link in the chat when when I finish up here. And that's been, I think, really well received within the broader ecosystem, because it provides kind of that open source guidance as to how any company in any sector and really in any country can begin to integrate a gender lens into their businesses. And lastly, we also developed and published a few public case studies and reports, and I will also pop the link in the chat in a bit. And so we wanted to close here just providing a bit of an example of one of those technical assistance projects, and one that I think is very close to our hearts. This was a project with a sustainable aquaculture company that is based in a community in Peru that is very rural and largely indigenous. And what originally attracted, what we thought was attractive about this company and this investment from the ILU fund was that about 2/3 of their full-time employees identify as women. And in a region in which more than half of women have informal employment, this is really a step towards not only job security and stable wages, but also the benefits that many of us enjoy in formal employment. And so this company is having a significant impact in the region in terms of how they are engaging with women in the community and often providing their first formal employment. However, once we dove in a little bit deeper, we also identified that although this company had a very clear commitment to and was advancing gender equality in practice, that this was not necessarily integrated within their talent management strategy and their broader business model, and at least in a systematic or intentional way. And so we identified the opportunity to engage with them, and we specifically focused on kind of transforming their talent management strategy. And we did that through 3 main components. For one, we provided kind of training to the broader leadership team, specifically 30 people that are located in the corporate office and that are leading different areas of the business. And we've found that training is highly important to any technical assistance project in order to kind of build that capacity within the team so that the impact can outlast just our engagement itself. And so that in this case, change can also come from the top down. Secondly, we looked at their talent management policies and practices, and we really dove in to understand where they can make improvements in order to put this on paper, right, in terms of how they engage with women within the business and in their communities. And lastly, we led a workshop series in which we directly trained over 155 women employees. And we touched a variety of topics, which I've listed here below. On one hand, preventative health and self-care. A very important topic in Latin America is to talk about gender-based violence and self-esteem. And then lastly, also personal projects and kind of this entrepreneurial spirit that is so present in Latin America, and how that can be harnessed in their lives going forward. And it was a great project. It was one of the few projects, because we were implementing in 2019, 2020, and 2021, in which we could meet in person with this company and with the women that participate in this program. And we received really positive feedback in terms of how they felt empowered, not only in a professional, but also a personal setting. And we closed out this project by leaving them with kind of a detailed, what we call roadmap or action plan to further kind of deepen their gender mainstreaming approach within the organization. And we're already seeing the results of that less than a year after this engagement. They've expanded their human resources department. They're bringing more resources, and they're giving them more leadership and decision-making capacity within the organization. They've turned this program that we implemented as a part of the technical assistance project into part of their talent management strategy, and so it's now integrated into the business in a way that they can provide this kind of ongoing accompaniment and support to their employees going forward. And lastly, they are also in the process of implementing a safe and anonymous channel in which employees can communicate their needs and concerns. And so these are the types of changes that we love to see beyond the scope of our project, and that really show kind of the compounding impact that these projects can have within the companies and the region. And I know that we want to spend some time also with hearing from you all and answering questions. So with that, I think I will turn it back over to Stephanie so that we can start the Q&A portion of this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alaka and Rachel, for sharing with us some of your amazing work and how your program is different in the sense that you have taken a step further than just mobilizing capital on the ground, but to ensure that like all these like project and on the ground, getting the resources, getting the support to deepen the impact and to take it to another level to really generate the impact that it is needed. So very, very encouraging to hear all these stories. And now, before I open the stage to the audience Q&A, I have some questions that I want to ask you both. Perhaps I could start with the first question that I have on my mind. So can you tell me from your perspective why now it's a very critical and important time to direct capital towards these sustainable and impact-focused projects or companies?
Yeah, great question. I mean, now is certainly an important time, and I think only because the situation is just becoming more and more urgent. We saw just last week a commitment at COP27 to provide loss and damage funding for vulnerable communities hit by climate disasters, and that's a very welcome and groundbreaking decision. But we've seen how commitments made at these events are more like promises, and they don't always come to pass. And the climate crisis that we're facing is a problem that's bigger than any one government, and meaningful change is going to require full mobilization of private sector capital in addition to public sector support. And the same is true of other development priorities, particularly gender equality, income inequality. And the reality is that until relatively recently, there just weren't good options for investors, ordinary people, to deploy capital into impact strategies. But now there's over $1 trillion invested in impact. That stat was just released by the Global Impact Investing Network in just this month. And there is, exactly as you've shown, Stephanie, a full spectrum of options from GICs to venture capital. So it's absolutely the moment to start directing your portfolio toward, the issues that matter most to you and are most pressing for the world.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. We are, in a sense, I feel like we are already late, and as you already mentioned, it has been like a critical time for too long. And so it's better late than sorry. We should really start, looking at different opportunities and projects where we could add the most impact and act on it. And thank you so much, Alexa. The next questions, it's about greenwashing and impact washing. There is a lot of coverage these days. We see that in the media about greenwashing and impact washing. And also I saw one of the questions kind of touching on that. And what are the steps do you think an investor can take to avoid falling victim of these phenomena?
That's another excellent question. I think in the context of the YILU Women's Empowerment Fund, we also use the term pink washing. Greenwashing and also pink washing as it relates to gender impact measurement. I think what we've learned at Deakin Impact is that it's highly important that there is a rigorous impact measurement process in place, and that is in place across the entire investment life cycle, from screening to due diligence to monitoring, reporting, and then lastly, what is so important for us is this piece of engagement. And so I think I can speak to a little bit about how we manage that at Deakin in order to avoid falling prey to green and pink washing, as you mentioned. At the outset in the screening phase, we look for investment opportunities in companies in which impact generation is core to the business's model, their operating model, right? In which every sale of a product or service directly generates impact. And so often we see that the KPIs that we are evaluating are also aligned with impact metrics. And so once we've kind of passed from that phase, we really go into a deep assessment in the due diligence phase. And for us, and specifically relating to gender impact measurement, it's about going beyond just counting women and men, and also to complementing that with qualitative metrics that support impact generation. So, for example, in addition to gender disaggregated data. We also look at policies, practices, and initiatives that promote gender equality within the operation itself and also the communities of influence. The monitoring phase is highly important. And as Alexa mentioned, we do have a high touch investment strategy, and that means that we are in regular meetings with our portfolio companies to understand what is going on beyond the numbers, right? So we get their impact data on a monthly or quarterly basis, but those touch points are really important to better understand the stories behind those numbers. And then lastly, of course, engagement. That's where we really are able to identify those opportunities to deepen their impact and engage with them to accelerate that. So I think, this is how we've kind of learned to avoid this impact washing, this green and pink washing. But I think the rigor with which we implement impact measurement needs to be at the same par as it would be with financial monitoring, for example.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that. I see that there's so much extra work just to ensure that like the projects or companies that you're putting your efforts and capital in are actually not misrepresenting or over-representing what they claim to be. And this is really important in maximizing any potential impact that we are trying to create. And you mentioned about metrics and reporting. And so that kind of leads to my next question. And I'll be really interested to hear more about metrics and reporting. I can totally imagine, like, for a lot of deep impact ventures, it's a constant struggle to allocate resource between like tracking, monitoring, reporting these different outcomes to satisfy investors. On the other hand, you also need to kind of dedicate the real resources on the ground to work on these projects, make sure everything is run and the desired outcomes are met. So so like with this on the background, where do you think we are as an industry with this reporting and metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good news is that there has been a lot of progress in recent years, but of course we still have a long ways to go. So I think some of the great advances in the last decade or so has been in terms of developing kind of common frameworks and standards, and also just language for impact measurement. I think impact measurement is no longer kind of nebulous, but rather we have frameworks that we can point to that help us to speak a common language and bring standards to our impact measurement. So of course, alignment with things such as the Sustainable Development Goals. However, there have also been other organizations such as the Global Impact Investing Network that have developed kind of standard metrics that investors such as ourselves can draw on to kind of standardize impact measurement. And so I think there's also been, in addition to that, a lot of kind of importance given to impact measurement. I think this is a sector that is growing so quickly, and I think there's increased recognition that impact measurement needs to be a core part of our investment strategy. However, one area in which I think that we still have a long ways to go, and where there's been a lot of attention recently, is on what we call impact performance. So moving beyond just trying to understand whether or not we are generating positive impacts, and trying to understand how much of that impact, how does that compare to other players in the industry, and how can we further expand or deepen that impact going forward. And so a lot of that has to do with having more credible and comparable impact data. So the industry is increasingly, moving towards kind of sharing our impact data more broadly, being more transparent with our reporting, and then developing kind of industry benchmarks so that we can better understand where we are and how we can do better. So I think that's just a few of the trends that we've noticed. I don't know, Alexa, if you have anything else to add there, any other thoughts?
No, I think we've said it all. I mean, it's a continuous improvement project. I've been doing this for 10 years, and certainly I think like we're getting there, and I think there's a lot more harmonization in the industry than there used to be. But it's still something that we're always seeking to improve, and that is challenging, especially when we're investing in so many different sectors, very diverse types of investments. Comparing a hydro project in Honduras and a aquaculture company in Peru, and trying to kind of put those on equal footing is a constant challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it's great to hear that like you also are seeing more collaboration between different participants trying to harmonize the standards and sharing data. I think that is one of them, like one very big area of encouragement in terms of like getting all these necessary data for more standardization. And so maybe leading to, so how do you handle impact reporting at Deacon?
Yeah, so we have a very rigorous reporting process in which we collect impact data from portfolio companies on a monthly and quarterly basis. We then aggregate that across our portfolio and report to stakeholders through impact reports. So we try to provide as much transparency as possible. We also complement, the data with the stories that we're bringing forward, both within the portfolio companies as well as within our own investment management processes. And I think that's been an important aspect as well.
Yeah, I also find that like, all these different metrics are relevant for whatever projects that you're working on along with some storytelling. It always gives so much more context and perspective for the whole effort behind it. So that's great. And so beyond all these numbers and theories, storytelling, can you share with us one or two stories about the impact that the capital being directed to the ILU fund has made on the stakeholders?
Sure, I would love to provide. I wish we had more time and I could tell you about each of the 28 portfolio companies, but I'll highlight two that I think are quite interesting in terms of their approach to impact generation. We've spoken a bit about how we invest in financial inclusion, and that continues to be a very important sector within Latin America and the Caribbean in order to drive kind of broader economic growth. And so we have one investment in an institution called Sembrar Sartawi in Bolivia that provides financial services to rural and smallholder farmers, and specifically farmers that live in regions with a high risk of adverse climate events. And what's very interesting about their business model is that it's much more than just the financial services themselves than the microloans. They also complement that with technical assistance, agriculture technical assistance, and also access to market. So they try to connect these smallholder farmers to global or national businesses and value chains in order to increase sales. And so we invested in this institution, which has our investment has helped to directly kind of expand their loan portfolio to reach more customers and also deepen their non-financial service offerings. This company also participated in the ILU Women's Empowerment Technical Assistance Program, and we engaged with them on a project that looked at women in leadership. So working with the talent management department, in order to identify opportunities to foster kind of the internal promotion and leadership of women employees. And part of that was establishing a mentorship program within the organization for what we call high potential women employees. So that's kind of one example in our financial inclusion portfolio. I wanted to provide another with a project called Via Luz, which I actually had the pleasure of visiting last week. I'm based in Guatemala, and this is a project, a housing project based in Guatemala City. Housing is a major issue in Latin America, as in a lot of countries around the world. However, in Latin America, there's a true deficit of affordable housing solutions, and deficit can refer to both quantity, but also the quality of housing. And in Latin America cities, they're often highly overcrowded, right? And so that means that people often live on the outskirts of those cities in order to access affordable housing. And so Via Luz is a great project that is in a very centric location in Guatemala City that is looking to provide more than 300 quality apartments. And in addition to the apartments themselves, also some amenities such as daycare services, etc. So this is a really innovative project in the sense that it's also part of a social housing program in Guatemala. And that means that clients can offer kind of more favorable financing conditions, and in this case as well, a path to home ownership as opposed to renting. And most of their clients are living today in kind of crime-ridden areas and zones. And so simply the safety of the centric location is very impactful in and of itself. So I know that affordable housing is a sector that I think has received a lot of attention in countries such as Canada and the US. For us, it's been particularly challenging to identify and invest in these projects in the context of Latin America, but we have not given up, and Via Luz is a great example of one of those projects that is really meeting a very important need in a country like Guatemala.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing these amazing stories, and also for all the insights, for the questions that I had, and thank you so much. And now we still have like about 10 or so minutes, so I think it's time to open the stage for Q&A for the audience. And I'm seeing a lot of wonderful questions coming through. Perhaps there's a question about, perhaps this is for Alexa and Rachel. Why just for the ILU Impact Fund or Deacon Impact? Why just focus on Caribbean and Latin America?
That is a good question. I think partly from passion. So I co-founded the business 10 years ago with my business partner, Jose Lamien. He's Peruvian. His wife is Mexican, and they had been investing this way for many years. And, I think we had a really aligned philosophy on how to do impact investing. And, since then, we've really built up a very strong network and track record in Latin America and the Caribbean. 90% of our team identify as Latin or Hispanic. And so that's really where we have, I think differentiated expertise and understanding. And then I think also just in terms of, I don't know how to explain it, but kind of, impact bang for your buck. When you invest in the Caribbean, for example, it's one of the regions in the world that is most vulnerable to climate change. It also has one of the richest solar resources in the world. So by putting solar in place in Jamaica, you're having an outsized impact compared to building it in British Columbia, right, where we have 90% renewable on the grid. So I think when you think about those kinds of decisions, also gender inequality, right, like there's many more women that are excluded from access to essential services like financial services, healthcare services, than we would see, in Canada. And so not to say that there aren't really strong impact investment opportunities at home as well, and that should also be pursued, but we see a lot of opportunity for generating social and environmental benefit and earning a financial return in the Latin American Caribbean market.
Great. Thank you so much. The impact bank for the buck. I like that. Yeah. And and we also find that like generating impact or helping different causes, there should be no border. And as long as where it is most needed, then we should direct our attention and work and capital towards that. And I see another question. Maybe I could answer that. It's about banks. I think more specifically to Canadian banks too. So so how as at Genus, like how do we deal with banks like in our screening and also in our investment process? We all like Canadian banks has always been like a bit more sticky subject because they do have a higher exposure to green, to fossil fuel funding. And so as a Canadian investment manager, so how we deal with this is number one, we do have internally, we do have a stricter screen in terms of controversies. We have stricter screen for any environmental or carbon related controversies for the financial sector. And also like we require an overall higher ESG performance and also the rating for banks. And another big thing that we do in terms of like looking at banks is the engagement program. So engagement with banks is a big focus for us. So some of the priorities that we are hoping to achieve is like to engage banks so then they could first of all, open up their curtain to show us, what they have been doing, more disclosure around their lending. And also we advocate them to adopt policies in terms of like doing more green financing, and also like, be a driver in terms of like, they have so much lever in driving positive climate action. So we are also advocating for them to adopt science-based targets to lay out the plan to the path to net zero. So these are the things that we do within our funds. Well, as a Canadian investment manager, a lot of our clients are Canadians. And if you look at fossil fuel sector and the financial sector, they're already 70% of the whole TSX. So we cannot really completely ignore them. And at some point, we also have to think about like we should kind of achieve some good risk-adjusted returns. So considering all these factors, engagement becomes a big part of the program, and hopefully, like over time, will drive the positive changes in the policy. And next one, if you could bear with me. Okay, there's a question about the latest the Global Impact Investing Network report indicates that only 1% of impact AUM are located in Latin America. And why do you think there are so few impact investors in Canada investing in this region?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's another reason that we do it, right? It's open field in some ways. Yeah, Latin America is a challenging region to invest in. I think there's political instability. There's been macro instability. Many countries are characterized by high inflation. It's a region where you need to have very strong networks and a very close proximity to your investments. You can't sit in Toronto and invest in companies in Latin America. And so I think it's that challenge that has made it more difficult for capital to flow into Latin America. And certainly we're seeing an exacerbation of that recently. With interest rates higher in developed markets, we're seeing a flood of capital back to the US in particular, and many of our companies are experiencing challenges, even refinancing existing facilities, because a lot of capital relatively did flow into Latin America when people were chasing yield. And so now that has turned. And so, we just see it as part of our mission is to be there through economic cycles and to continue to support our businesses, to continue to raise capital, and to be safe hands for investors that really want to allocate to the region.
Yeah, they were lucky to have you, Alexa, to kind of, to start this venture, to make sure, like the necessary attention is given to them to help them. And yeah, thank you. And let's move on to another question. Maybe there's a question about, it would be interesting to hear what brings, Alexa and Rachel, yourself into this field, impact investing fields. Is it from interest in finance primarily, or like from your interest in ESG matters generally?
Well, maybe I'll go first. So, I mean, when I started in impact investing, like we didn't call it impact investing. It didn't really exist, right? So I came from mainstream finance. I worked for, Canada Pension Plan and was working in mainstream, like public market investing. And I really wanted to have, closer touch to the companies I was investing in. I wanted to know where my money was going. I wanted, my day-to-day work to do more than maybe generate a basis point of difference on this giant portfolio that I was kind of working for. So, at that time I started working in microfinance in Africa, and then when I moved back to Canada, wanted to continue to invest in that way. And at the time, that meant starting a business because there were really not a lot of alternatives. There were no ways for Canadians to invest in impact, and so that's changed a lot, and it's fantastic to see how the ecosystem has grown, and now we can have forums like this.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, I think I might be one example of that change, because I first came in contact with the concept of impact investing in college. I ended up writing my senior thesis. The title was Doing Well and Doing Good. So I became something like obsessed with this idea of the intersection between business and impact, and how those two can go hand in hand. I actually started my career in management consulting in Boston. And I thought that was important. I went in with the idea of wanting to gain kind of private sector experience, and then kind of being able to apply that in the impact investing sector, and then transitioned over. So it's been a great journey, and Deacon Impact has been a great fit
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, maybe a little bit about myself, why I got myself into this. So I was primarily very interested in finance, in numbers, and so I didn't know too much about sustainable impact investing before I rejoined Genus in 2006. And then when I came back, and I realized Genus is like so forefront in terms of creating all these amazing sustainable impact investing strategies. And I was lucky enough to be in a position to work with clients, mostly like to basically to help shape the journey into aligning the investments with their values. And now I've been on the job for a number of years, and then I feel like, I actually find more meaning for my finance job, because finance is like typically with the kind of like the conception where it's only money driven. But then now, after I've been, having this opportunity to work with different foundations and other institutions and clients that have this impact or sustainable objectives for the investments, I do find more meaning in my field, and I actually really want to continue into this. And because any other thing without this would be much less meaningful to my job. Yeah. Okay. Do we have time for? Let me see. I guess so. I don't know if I've missed some questions, but I guess this is kind of all the time we have for today. And I would like to, for those of you, if I do miss any questions in the chat, we'll have your questions answered directly from one of our team members if you provided your name. And also, I would like to express a big thank you for all of you for attending the webinar with us today, and also huge thanks to Alexa and Rachel for spending the time with us, and taking time out of your busy schedule. And as a token of appreciation, I would like to we have made a donation to BC Cancer Foundation as recommended by Alexa. And also for the audience, our valued Genus clients, and for those of you who are new to Genus, after I close the session, please stay on for a little longer, for a few seconds. You'll be redirected to a survey where we would really want to hear your thoughts and feedback. And finally, due to the holidays, Christmas coming up, our monthly webinar series will resume in January with our annual year-end review and looking ahead event. And that event would be both in person and live streamed. So please stay tuned for any invitations in your mailbox. And also a recording of today's webinar will be made available to you via email, and also will be up on the website in the next few days. So if you would like to revisit, or if you would like to share with your friends and family, please feel free. And finally, a big thank you again from me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us, Stephanie. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, everyone.